I always learn from Chiney Ogwumike. You always learn from her. The best broadcaster on women's basketball, on men's basketball, on basketball. Here to join us, talking the women's game. Locked on Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogwumike for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. You've been showing up for us. We've been showing up for you. 6 days a week on women's basketball, past, present, and future. Over 180,000 of you showed up in February alone. It is, of course, not just me, the entire incredible team over at The Next. I was just telling Chiney before the broadcast started, we're going to be at 11 of the 16 venues this weekend for March Madness rounds 1 and 2. Subscribe now, thenexthoops.com. Get it direct to your inbox, $9 a month, $72 a year, covering the game in all its glory. And so off the top, I need to take a moment for a point of personal privilege. I made an assertion right in the opening, and we're going to talk about everything that makes what Chiney does so important. I have a long and public paper trail on this, talking about Chiney, the work you do on and off the court, and why it matters so much. But to me, it is nothing less than the integration of the women's game into the larger sports conversation from someone who is versed on all of it. So the fact that you launched the Chiney Show is a very big deal for people. If you have not subscribed, go do it immediately. Like pause this, go subscribe and come back, okay? Because it is very important. Chiney, you have been an incredible player on the court as well. I know we haven't yet talked about your 2024 plans. Take me through what you're thinking about that at this time, about playing on the court, and then let you get into all the things you're doing off of it.
Well, Howard, I'm so glad to join you. And this is actually my first interview post Chiney Show. And I wanted to make sure I speak to someone who has been a tremendous advocate for the game. And like to have 11 representatives in different locations, that is beyond amazing. And so congratulations to you. And I love this show. And my 2024 plans. Wow. Okay. Well, life is lifing. Life is happening. And, for me, I've been someone who, you come into the WNBA and you really think, wow, you want to be an all-star, you want to be a champion, all those things. And then maybe you get like 5-6 years in and you start understanding the privilege that we have to play and the legacies that are there. And to me, anytime I think about my career on the court, I always think about impact. Everything came to impact. And natural course of events have happened. I mean, my sister is in Seattle now, and I'm so proud of her. I was able to watch and experience her journey to her 13th season. And for me, like, I think people don't really I never told anybody, but like I have played and I play and I love the game. It's like intrinsic within me, but I realize that my voice is my greatest impact. Being able to occupy multiple spaces. I did not have a plan there was no design for me to finish the WNBA season and then go work the WNBA finals. It was like a calling that ESPN noticed and said, hey, Chiney, we would love for you to create impact. And I was able to work the WNBA finals after my last season. Same way to work in the NBA. And then even now working Women's College Game Day and being a voice of March Madness. Like, there's true impact. There's true momentum. We're at the pinnacle of something truly special. And so I think my energies have aligned more with the impact through my voice and broadcasting. And people don't realize once I became a pro, I mean, I'm probably my family and my agent. I have played most of my professional career in pain. Like from my rookie season, I was dealing with situations. I think it was definitely, not having this science and not having this, we still had a little bit of that old school ball to you fall mindset. And so I ran into my rookie year, found success, but then ran into some adversity. And so, dealing with those pains, also understanding myself, my body, I just realized that it's just focusing on my voice, never closing the door. I'm only 31 years old, but understanding the impact that I have in the space that I occupy, particularly with broadcasting. That's where my energies are right now. So I would like never say never, but right now I think, I've been called to do a lot of great things, and I want to make sure I spend my energy where I feel like I can make the most impact. And right now that's TV and even, some other ventures that are crazy.
It's amazing. And again, I want to go back because you've talked about this, and this is the thing that I'm not sure is fully understood by people, but there is no template for doing what you're doing. There is not a template for being the type of voice you have been across the WNBA, NBA, and the collegiate game as well. And we're going to get more into that. It's what makes, to my mind, the Chiney Show such a big deal in terms of what it brings to people's understanding of the game and that connection, but also just doing it while you are playing the game at a professional level. And a lot of people who are listening to this show know, I want to go back to it for a moment so everyone understands this, that you are somebody who already you are in the leaderboards across the WNBA history. You are the 11th all-time leader in field goal percentage in this league. You had 3 seasons in the top 10 in offensive win shares. You are a multi-time all-star. You were a rookie of the year. This is not, hey, you're playing, but you're really a broadcaster. This is not your broadcasting and dabbling in it. You are doing both of these things at a level that few have ever done, and doing it at the same time is something that is no one can take away from your legacy. So I apologize for going off on this side tangent. For me, it's an amazing thing. I don't think people fully understand. I just, as you think about it, when you think about what you've done, and I know you've left everything there is to leave on the court. How proud are you about what you have been able to do as a pro on the court alone?
Maybe it's the Nigerian woman in me that we feel like you're never good enough. You got to keep striving. You got to keep pushing for success. But for me, I think there's a piece in knowing that you evolve as a person, you evolve as a player. And, it's kind of hard because I've had a lot of hardships and they have been behind the scenes, and those hardships have turned into blessings. One career has morphed into multiple careers at one time. And I think it's been beautiful. I guess the thing that I'm probably the most proud of is that when I started, oftentimes, we talk about when athletes lose the game, they sink into some dark places. And I'm just grateful. My middle name is Joy. And my mom always says, be careful what you name a child because that's who they become. And I firmly believe in that idea of being who you are meant to be. And I've always felt like even when things are difficult, you bring the joy. And that's what allowed me to stay optimistic in my 2 injuries and find ESPN and find broadcast and find a voice also in the NBA and even now potentially now in the White House, which is kind of cool. But yeah, I think to me, it just is this idea that not being afraid of what's on the other side of an opportunity. And I know I was probably the first simultaneously, there are others that are doing it now. And I think that's the thing I'm most proud of, knowing that when we occupy spaces that are not necessarily built for us, that we create pathways for others. I know Candace did it thereafter soon. Draymond, a lot of people think about him, notably CJ McCollum. Now it's very commonplace, but back in 2014, 15, when I was starting, it really wasn't. And so I'm really proud of how a lot of women don't have to go overseas because they feel like they can do what Aaliyah Boston's doing for the Big Ten Network while also playing, So that to me is what makes me excited. And I also see that excitement when other people come up to me and they're like, so it just evolves. Your impact evolves.
It's a pathway, like you said, for not having to choose, that you can be all of these things at once, that this is not. Listen, I remember having a conversation with Tamika Catchings about the fact that for her 20s and 30s, she had to spend 7 months of her year overseas. It was not an option. It was not a choice. And this is one of the great players in the history of the game. This is for everyone. And so being able to create that pathway, like you said, for so many who have followed, and as near as I can tell, it is just the beginning, is enormous. So we're going to be back in segment 2 talking all things the Chiney Show. You just mentioned in passing, oh, by the way, a presidential advisor, like, oh, right, that's just, another thing you do. So we're going to get into that, talk about what it is to be a woman in sports media today, because there's a lot to it that I don't think is fully understood either. We won't get to everything with you. We never do, but I'm just excited that you're here. So back with more in just a minute. But first, I want to talk to you guys about Stitch Fix, one of today's sponsors today. And I want to talk to you specifically about how easy Stitch Fix makes it. It is March, it is April. I do not have a lot of time to go shopping and try and find new clothes, but Stitch Fix brings the stylist to you. You basically fill out a form. Your stylist understands your style, your size, your budget. They do all the shopping for you, and it just shows up at your door. You try on everything, right? 5 just for you pieces show up at your door. If you like them, you keep them. If not, you send back the rest. There's a label right in there. It's always so easy. I don't love to shop. I'm a hot take, but they save me that time and effort, and I get outfits that make me look and feel really good for the off chance that I get some off time to be able to take my wife out. During March, it's at a rarity, but when I do it, I love to do it. So get started today at stitchfix.com/locked on. That's stitchfix.com/LOCKEDON. Stitchfix.com/locked on. So back with Chiney Ogwumike. And so Chiney, let's address your show first, and then we'll talk about your advising the President of the United States, which is pretty cool as well, I would say. But the Chiney Show, and here's where I want to come in on it, right? The thing that you do, that you bring, and this is very hard, particularly in TV to my mind, is you're not here for a hot take. You are here to tell us what's really going on. And I say this by way of, when I have had the chance to interview you, I've had the chance to learn. And that matters, right? That matters. We're trying to get a sense of what's really happening. Any good journalist is trying to do that. It's what you're bringing every time in. So for you, how does that dovetail with your philosophy of being in this space, in the media space?
Yeah, hot takes promote expediency, right, in your journey, because people like to talk about it, comment on those things. And I've just found that I don't want to say I'm allergic to hot takes, but I've learned to form stronger opinions. I guess that's a different way, but for me, I just like speaking the truth. I like watching the game. I like bringing the facts, and I like bringing the true perspective of athletes in the locker room, because I currently am an athlete in the locker room, right? And so when I work and I see a lot of those things, it's hard for me, because it feels like success is predicated on just spitting fire and getting the people talking. But then I realize, when I step outside of the studio and I meet people and I go to games and I go to events and I just talk casually, everyone respects the fact that I approach everything the same way. I approach the game the way that the game deserves, have respect for the game. And I also know the people in the game, and I don't try to say things that aren't what helps the game. I try to just speak true to my experiences, true to their experience, and true to the game. And so, yeah, I've loved my job. I think it's, at times as a woman, it's you lead with the facts, because people tend to question your point of view off the jump. But then now I feel really free, Howard, because I've been in the game for a minute in broadcasting since, let's just say, formalized 2016, 8 years, which is crazy. And now people know me well enough that they want my opinions. They want my takes, even if they're a little spicier than what I normally do, right? So that's the Chiney Show. It's basically, and I think what we lack in media oftentimes, and there have been a few platforms, so I don't want to discredit those, But like what we lack in media is a place where we talk about the game the way that the game deserves. What is the biggest story of the day? Does the biggest story happen to be women's basketball? Then we should lead with women's basketball. What is the biggest story? Like on one day, it could be Caitlin Clark becoming the all-time leader in the NCAA in points. On another day, it could be LeBron James scoring 40,000 first ever. What is the biggest story, and touching on those stories that need to be heard? Because I've been in the production rooms, I've been in the studios where, things, because of we only have 60 minutes on NBA Today to get all of the basketball news that you need to know. We only have 30 minutes before an NBA game to touch on the games, to really get the audience excited to watch the game. Some things can fall through the cracks. And for me, the Chiney Show is, we always say this is the home for hoops, all hoops, whether it's a WNBA, NBA, women's college hoops, Basketball Africa League. If you got game, period. And so bringing my sort of flavor and perspective and my points of view, but also allowing myself to just be me, because a lot of people, when I am fortunate to be able to, partake in discussions on air, it's typically in like 45 to 90-second sound bites, if I'm lucky, 90 seconds, which means I'm probably doing a breakdown at the big LED board. It's never my full thoughts. And right. I feel like people resonate with those full thoughts because those are the thoughts that they're looking for with facts and analysis and breakdowns and stuff. But I just felt like I was leaving too much on the table. And so I have a great partner in Players TV, which is very, perfect for my ambitions and knowing what I support with. And they work with, Chris Paul and, a number of people in the game that are really investing in giving ownership to players as well to be a part of this media landscape. And so I worked with them, and now we've created the Chiney Show. It's on YouTube. We are small, but we are mighty. I think we've over doubled in our audience in the first month, pushing up. And so I'm excited to see what comes with the Chiney Show. And I'm grateful to have a space and people that believe in my voice where we can have fun. We can also touch on pop culture, but we can also talk about the stories that matter in the ways that we should be talking about them and prioritizing them.
Yeah. And to that pop culture, you have opened my eyes to Love Is Blind. I haven't seen it, so I came for the basketball, and so you allowed me to be a bridge into that. So my wife and I need a show, so I'll put it on the list.
So. You could do that too. True Detective works as well.
Okay, I will make a note. But to your point, right? This is again, because you and I have both been in those rooms at different times where the women's story is an afterthought, where it's not so much of this is not what is the level of interest in men's versus women's, and it's so much what are the choices being made and who are the people who are making those choices. And so knowing that there is that type of voice to be able to make those decisions is incredibly empowering, because I have long believed, and I've had, we've seen in both directions. Look, we've always seen the haters who say they'll never watch women's basketball. We have seen, frankly, in our space too, right? There are people who say, men's basketball is not for me, or they'll generalize about men's basketball in ways that are ridiculous, because men's basketball is a gray area the way women's basketball is a gray area, because there's so much to be had. And so having that love, having that integration of both spaces, I think allows people to understand on any given day, like you said, the story can be one, it can be the other, it can be both. You even addressed it in I thought, a wonderful way when you talked about how to fix the All-Star game. You use that at the same moment. You're talking about, obviously, this big moment, Steph and Sabrina, and frankly, people talked about it differently. People talked about the WNBA differently out of that than they did. The celebrity game is fine as far as it goes. I've always had a personal concern about it. The idea of, gee, we're putting WNBA players, professional basketball players, in the same place with comedians and actors, and and it's a level down. It's not what we saw there, where, all right, Sabrina and Steph are shooting, and there's an understanding these are pros who are at the top of their craft. But you talked about players should get paid more, and you didn't shy away from how do we do it. You also didn't. The easy way to do it, the hot take would have been to rip the All-Star game. That wasn't you. It was, what do I find? How do I go about solving this? And you came in comprehensive. It's 20 minutes. I said it before. I'll say it again. Like, go subscribe. Go see what this is. This is new. This is different. This is not in our space. And to your point, it has nothing to do with gee, we're denigrating anything that came before us. It's that we don't want to be alone. We all want to be doing this. We all want to be bringing it in a different way. There is so much to women's basketball to be able to tell these stories and have them as part of the larger conversation matters so much. So I'm grateful for it. I don't mean to go off on a tangent about it, but it's a
No, I
really
appreciate
big
you.
deal.
You're
People need to know. So anyway, the Chiney Show, incredible, amazing. I want to talk bigger picture. I want to talk about your role with the United States government. I want to talk about what a day in the life is like for you now, and really not a hot take, a sense of women in sports media here in 2024. You need people to understand what that means in the challenge. So we'll be right back in segment 3, talking to Chiney Ogwumike. I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And listen, when you're hiring for a small business, you need to find quality professionals that are right for the role. Believe me when I tell you, having LinkedIn Jobs as a means of finding who are the new, great, young voices who need to be telling the stories of women's basketball, something I rely on every single day, making sure I am a big believer in extending the ladder down. LinkedIn Jobs helps me do it. It's not just another job board. It is a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. It gives you access to folks who you can't find anywhere else. Hiring is easy when you have so many qualified candidates. And they say, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Just speaking personally, it's 100% for me. We have gotten so many remarkable journalists, many of whom you've met or seen over at thenexthoops.com, and others, spoiler alert, who you're going to see in the coming weeks. I can't wait to introduce to you. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LOCKEDON-NBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So we are back with Chiney Ogwumike. And again, you are part of the inaugural President's Advisory Council on African Diaspora Engagement. You're working directly, of course, with Vice President Kamala Harris. It gives you an opportunity, you talk about impact, you talk about voice, to be doing it in a direct way with decision makers. Can you just take us through how it came about and what the day-to-day of that work is like? You mentioned you were on a call for a couple hours just today about it.
So sure, I'll give you a little bit of a day of my life. So I wake up, I train. I'm a very big hot yoga woman. I love hot yoga. I never thought I'd be that person, but now I can't go a day without it. And again, like I mentioned, earlier, I like to stay ready so I don't have to get ready. I'm 31. I know that I'm focusing on my voice and broadcast, but I also want to stay ready just in case climates change, right? Things shift. But yeah, this morning, for example, like my day slate is, I had a meeting call with the Diaspora Council. It was a 2-hour meeting call where we set the agenda was based off of what are we going to send our formal recommendations to the president on how to increase diaspora engagement through trade, entrepreneurism, digital economies, creative services, which is sports, music, entertainment, and also education. And so your girl is in the thick of it with the homework, literally creating recommendations for the president. And I'm very grateful. So that was one call before you today. And then I head to studio to do NBA Countdown. And then I'm there all the way through the night until about 9:30 p.m. and then get ready to, rinse, repeat. Now, I'm very grateful to be a part of this council. I think people are familiar with my work on TV, my play on the court. So I guess I'll focus a little bit more on the new appointment. And so how did I get on it? Honestly, I heard about it and I had a lot of friends that suggested and said that they should nominate me to be a part of the council, and including one executive director of our Players Association, Terry Jackson, who's fabulous and I love her to death. And when I heard people were capable of connecting dots and doing these recommendations, it just happened. And I thought it was completely a long shot because I am on a council with CEOs, heads of universities, all these people that are truly like on the Forbes 100. And then it's your girl, me. Chiney, representing the WNBA and also just the world of sports, the sports lane. And I think they understood the power, one, of youth. And, 60% of, Nigerian youth are under the age of 30. Like youth and potential there, and creating bridges for both economies, both the United States and also African countries. It's important now more than ever before. And so being able to be the person that represents the youth, represents the engagement, represents this diversion from what we know traditional economies to be, to now the creative economies, which are media, entertainment, sports, and all of those things. That is my ultimate homework assignment. And so days like today, I am creating ideas to help boost engagement. I am holding us accountable to build transparency with the public. I am suggesting activities, even working in collaboration with universities to help build our exchange programs. So your girl's working. And it's been one of the coolest experiences of my life. And I'm very proud as a member of the council. So we went to the White House and got sworn in. Secretary of State Blinken introduced Vice President Kamala Harris, who swore us in, which was truly special because the last time I saw her was at the opening game of last season, where my sister and her had a great moment before the game holding the jersey. And so we got to reconnect. And then the first thing that this council has ever done was actually the initiative that we led through sports, accepting the invitation by the ambassador of Cote d'Ivoire, Jessica Davis-Ba, amazing woman, to go and I brought my girls with me as representatives of the U.S. contingent for the African diaspora, Lisa Leslie, Crystal Dunn, badass female athletes, right? We went and observed and experienced Cote d'Ivoire, Abidjan, and the Cup of Nations, which was probably the most historic Cup of Nations just from viewership. Then I had to bring them to Nigeria. So that was the first thing that our council has ever done. And I'm proud to say that through my council member position, we were able to execute that. And now we're planning for much more to come. And today was a day where we had a council meeting. So I had to do my homework, do my prep, present my recommendations. And a couple of my recommendations are getting presented to the president. So I'm very grateful, but it's another job. It's another responsibility. And it's honestly a blessing, because in my wildest dreams, I always joke with NECA. I'm like, NECA, do you ever think that us crazy little girls, NECA probably around age 9, me at age 7, growing up in Cypress, Texas, would be living the life we're living? Like, never in our wildest dreams. It all came through basketball. And so, yeah, your girl's in politics.
It is at a moment where public service is more important than it's ever been, I would argue. And so it's incredibly empowering to hear this. And I just thank you on behalf of everyone here for all that you are doing in this realm. Obviously, we're here for all the updates as we go.
I missed my favorite part, Howard. On our council, finally, I got to talk with Viola Davis. So selfishly, the TV aficionado in me is just like trying not to freak out in every conversation, because be able to serve on a council with her, especially with her entertainment initiatives, like I'm not gonna lie, this is maybe TMI, but whatever. On our meeting, I was like, Viola's like, I'm here to learn and collaborate. I was like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna shoot my shot. Let us collaborate. Together. And she laughed. So it's cool making new friends. And I'm very aggressive with my friendships, and particularly with her. So
I loved every bit of that, and a collaboration with Viola Davis would be something that I am very much looking forward to. I also just wouldn't put it past you. It's just another aspect of your career, which, again, you mentioned the Forbes list, but you were on Forbes 30 under 30 as well. I mean, this has just been, your trajectory is unlike anyone we've ever seen. And so before we go, I want to talk to you about it, because we've talked about this in the past, and you mentioned it up at the top. You said, well, now people want to hear my opinion. And it always, at some level, blows my mind. So I always have wanted to hear what you had to say. And anyone who wanted to learn should have wanted to do that. But has it shifted? And how much further do we have to go? Which I know these are two subjective things, but your view, you're living it.
It's completely shifted. When I first, and I'll just speak to the last decade, when I first started working at ESPN, I remember in 2020, I had to pitch SportsCenter so hard to do a segment that I taped during commercial break on the CBA being ratified and the impact of that. And I knew that this was going to make waves in the women's sports and even just women's workplace overall, because I literally just came from New York watching my sister do an interview with Robin Roberts, talking about the impact and the trickle down. But to enter, the sports space, it just feels like at times it's very protected, right? Because of the nature of where sports fans were at that time, at least where perception thought they were.
Right.
Fast forward to now, or maybe even a year or so later, it was hard to get segments that we pushed on women's athletes. I will even say this. I remember I was hosting one day NBA Today, which, by the way, is one of the best programs in integrating. Before it used to be years ago, women's basketball would probably rarely, if ever, make the show. But now it's so commonplace to we just dropped the Cameron Brink news into the middle of the show as well. So it's progress has been made. But I remember I was hosting one day, and because I was able to host, I remember hearing it was back when they did the Chosen One Invitational maybe a year ago, and it was Juju and Bronny playing for Sierra Canyon. And I remember what was scripted in our show was about Bronny. But LeBron, I knew just by nature of occupying the space that I occupy and getting to meet Juju over the summer coming to our WNBA games, I was like, okay, we have to make sure to highlight the fact that at that invitational, LeBron stayed and watched Juju, who balled. Yeah. And put up crazy numbers, And so just being able to have that type of perspective in that real time and also have the seat where you can advocate for those stories, that wasn't too long ago, But it's changed. I have to salute Dave Roberts at ESPN, who has created so many programs like WNBA Countdown, pushing for Women's College Game Day, pushing for pregame shows. Remember back when we used to get our WNBA games primarily on ESPN2 and they just pop on? There was no pregame show to that. Now having WNBA Countdown, now having Women's College Game Day. I went to Blacksburg, Virginia, and it was one of the best experiences of my life getting to know that environment. Never knew that existed. I was not an ACC girly, even though Stanford isn't about to be ACC, right? But, now the properties are emerging because people are finally opening their eyes in a way that they did not do prior. And that's based off of the talents of what we're seeing. That's based on the fact that women's basketball right now is just more interesting and more storylines and benefits from having players that stay for 3 years so that you can follow them through their careers. So many things are converging at the right time. The properties, the game, and also I think NIL helps because now brands have an invested opportunity like the State Farms and the Caitlin Clarks to amplify her as she is rising. So many good things happening at once. Still a very long way to go because I would love for shows like yours and shows that talk about the women's game to get more national coverage. It would be a dream to be able to have a women's, think about what's happening with women's college basketball. People want a place to listen or watch, especially on a national platform. Those are things that I think 2 years ago, I'd be like, oh, that's light years away. Now it's can we fight for these things now? We have some of those properties, not all. And I do think the tide has turned. And so it's been a blessing to watch the evolution and even the evolution within the past decade.
It has been a blessing to watch that you are in the rooms and you are helping to make that difference. It's happening fast. It's happening faster, I think, than people understand. You are a primary reason why this happens. I'm going to say it in a way that you can't. People are going to look back and understand the role that you played. So Chiney Ogwumike, thank you for everything to our listeners. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. Thank you to the 1.6 million of you who read us at thenexthoops.com last month alone. We'll be back tomorrow with Christy Sides of the Indiana Fever talking about some present and, some future.
Happy lady right there, huh?
A very happy lady right there. Chiney Joy Ogwumike, thank you for your time. Until tomorrow, I'm Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Tuesday.
Ogwumike for the win. Good!
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.